It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. Now you, Emperor. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "What's the core?" said the stone anxiously. "Feed me death, and I will give you the power to take what you want." Why was he listening to a talking rock? But the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies. As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun. Was it the time of the lost gods before the Transcendent Emperor? Was it the future? Feed souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting.
Can I borrow that? This was the nice part of town, but the ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests. He was more and more extraordinary.
The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Reynardo. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him.
Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. Had that door been opened before? It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable. Zenobia was leading the Imperial Ravens here. She loved to be in the vanguard, where the danger was, where she needed her wits. Renato pitied whoever she was fighting, especially if it was him. Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know. Because there's no I in team. Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word. Hey! Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling. Doing that, thought Renato.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. "Kill her," whispered the stone. "You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please." "No," said Zenobia. "Not that way." Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? With a flick of his wrist, he slashed Zenobia's throat. Her eyes widened even more. And then the light went out of them. Renato felt amazing. Power was rushing into him like water from a burst dam. Oh, such brilliance, exulted the Iblis stone. Tasty.
He felt a bit bad about killing her. He was pretty sure she still loved him. But needs must when the devil drives. Renato returns to the Farfarer and set a course for the Nexus. The Empire had a communication outpost there. He could call the Emperor directly.
It was time to seize the outpost and let the Emperor know what he had done. The Nexus was beautiful. He never realized how beautiful. Everything glowed. The wind was so sweet. The sun so soft. The stones so warm. The black raven feathers. Black feathers. Suddenly, his eyes are filled with them. He's falling through smoke under a dead sun. A voice calls him home. Is this a vision? Whose? Is it the time of the lost gods? Or the future? No matter. What mattered now was killing his way to the Imperial outpost and challenging the Emperor from there.
This is quite the view, he thought. Hey, what do ravens say when they die? Never mind. I'll wait. Once, he found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series.
Up ahead was Lapino. What was he doing here?
Bernardo! Hey, buddy! Hey there, old buddy! Please don't kill me. Why would I kill you? Asked Bernardo, although he had been thinking about it. Well, you've become... look, I mean, no disrespect at all here. Kind of evil? Maybe you should, I don't know, go to the mountains to have a think? See if maybe you're sure the stone is not all that healthy a thing to keep? I suppose you wanted, Bernardo said, and poked Lapino in the chest for emphasis. Oh, had he just killed Lapino? Oh, damn it. He'd go to the outpost, use their far speaker, tell the Emperor what he'd done, and then he'd go to the secret rebel base, let them know he was ready to lead them to victory.
This sword from the frigid north was really useful for making popsicles and birdsicles.
Renato rampaged through the Imperial outpost like a water buffalo rampaging. At the last moment, he remembered not to kill the far speaker toad. After all, he wanted a word with the Emperor. But there was only silence. Haha! The Emperor was scared, like little girl. Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Applauded the Iblistone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his far speaker, wouldn't he? Who are you? Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become? The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino. Demanded the Iblistone. I need to think, Renato told it. You're not good at thinking, said the Iblistone. You're good at killing. It's what you do. It's your destiny. But he set sail for the mountains, where he could be alone with his thoughts. Why were there Raven Scouts here in the empty mountains?
Was there nowhere he could find peace and quiet? There were other ravens here too. Shadowy ones, transparent, lining the path. Ghosts. They cawed as he passed, but they didn't try to stop him. Spectators. Had he really killed that many ravens?
He really wasn't making a dent in those shields. This could be the new aerobics craze. Am I right?
Then he saw her. Zenobia. She was a ghost too. She ran off when she saw him. How could a ghost be afraid? He followed her. He had to.
This would be the perfect place for a tic-tac-toe board. I'm sorry. Was that your shield? What else could you hook?
Renato followed Zenobia's ghost. Had he gone mad, seeing ghosts? Was she running from him or leading him somewhere? He'd come here to be alone, but he'd never been less alone in his life. Every raven he had slain haunted these rocks. Was this who he was? A killer? He was terribly good at killing. He was an adventurer. Or was that just another word for killer? You kill, whispered the stone. It is what your masters do. Embrace this destiny.
There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? If only he had some way to break the ice. Or convince it he was a friend. Say, how are you guys fixed for life insurance?
Who are these guys? They seem to make everyone else harder to kill.
Touché, he said, and died. close to you.
Smells burnt fur. His. Those flames really bring out your eyes. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. Once he tried to focus on the job he had to do. The rebellion. Wasn't there a battle coming soon? Oh, there'd be ravens to kill. Even an emperor. Such killing. Much wow. Oh, he'd never been so excited.
It was good to practice your moves, thought Renato. Keeps you limber. At the end of the mountain path, Zenobia awaited him. He could see right through her.
Why did you kill me? She said. I was your prisoner, and I loved you.
I needed the power, he said. Haven't you heard? There's a war on.
Then what's your excuse for killing me?
Asked his old friend Lapino, stepping out of the shadows. Renato didn't have an answer for that.
The demon has twisted you, said Zenobia. Abandon the stone. You've lost too much already.
Her words bit deeper than any sword ever had. So he shook his head, and once again swung his blade through her and Lapino. It had to all mean something. If he gave up the stone now, he would have sacrificed Zenobia and Lapino for nothing. So, Renato set course for the Imperial fleet, where he would end it all. The Emperor, the war, the madness. Renato boarded an Imperial ship. No one could stop him slashing his way towards the Emperor. Yes, that was right. To give up now would be to lose everything for nothing. But if he could liberate the land from the Mad Emperor, then he could give up the stone in peace. And those were absolutely his own thoughts. Not the stone manipulating him, right?
Oh, yes, exulted the stone. Feel your power. We will make history today.
He could hear a tiny voice within him.
Don't kill the Emperor. The stone will eat your soul. Was it madness?
I have to kill the Emperor, he told himself. That's what it meant to be a hero. To do what had to be done, no matter how terrible the cost.
Yes. And then you can have peace,
Promised the stone.
That is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore.
The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go. Boom! Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. In a swirl of newly remembered knowledge. He needed to focus. His hook didn't break. I think this is yours, said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. The tiny voice, whatever it was silent. He couldn't see ghosts around him, but he could feel them. If he gave up now, they would be angry. They would have all died for nothing. Who could give up this kind of power? Could anyone? Oh, he was just a fox with a talent for swordplay. How had this burden come to him? The Emperor offered the sword, then peace. Yes, peace. That is what he wanted now.
What did you do if one of these platforms stalled?
The Emperor was cowering in front of his ship.
Please don't kill me.
Croaked Emperor Isengrim III.
Here, take the crown. I don't want it anymore.
You must kill him, or he will have his troops. He will send assassins.
Please, have mercy. The rebellion is won. Or you could be emperor. I'll just go be a scientist or minstrel or sell gummy bears. Yeah, I promise not to bother you.
It's your moment.
With all the love he'd ever had for Zenobia, for Lapino, for the kit foxes he would never have, Renato raised his sword. And Renato plunged his sword into his own chest.
Yes. Wait. What?
Renato screamed as his life force ebbed into the stone and surged back into him, and ebbed out and surged back in. No! Screamed the stone. It began to heat up.
What have you done?
The stone began to glow. It became white hot. It became lava. Nice knowing you, said Renato, as the lava ran like butter. And he died. Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. That he did not have to fulfill, but he'd learned another. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? And this is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it?
Say goodnight, Gracie, said Renato, wondering who Gracie was.
The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one.
Renato hoped his mother wasn't watching. Every day he was getting better and better.
Ah, the road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing.
Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times.
No one could beat Renato at hot potato.
Good thing Renato didn't have vertigo. What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship.
That was fun. Let's do this again sometime.
Well, the eyes have had it.
Ah, a puzzle. Renato loved puzzles. Except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good.
His sword food teacher used to say power gems were cheating. Stupid old fart. That had been his mistake before, thinking he could win a battle of wills with an ancient evil all by himself. He had to be cleverer than that. Or braver. Or something.
There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway.
The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core.
Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense?
It was time to make a new sword.
Ah, Zenobia. Now that he knew she still loved him, he wanted to go back to her. But that hadn't worked out, had it? Maybe it was time to find the core of the Skyripper.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Once, Bernardo had opened a chest, and a jack-in-the-box jumped out. Jack-in-the-boxes, they gave him the Wiggins. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus.
He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move.
There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of superweapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it.
Of course. If you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, you could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective. Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction.
He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. Haven't you always wanted to do that?
A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk.
There was a sign. Take the goat across first. Renato's path was clear. Let the scientists ensure the Sky Ripper was safe to use, bring it to the rebel base, and then assault the Imperial fleet for the win.
This sword from the mystical East could make time itself slow for you. Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy do they sting if you didn't pay attention. Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen till our whole existence fell into it.
Another toad sighed. Irving still believes in string theory.
At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. And some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him, and then he would win the final battle.
Maybe it was the cold. But after a few steps, Renado's optimism started to slump.
What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies. Even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies, some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, okay, it wasn't all that much simpler, no. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least he was sure of.
Renato wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. A very clever engineer named Elon Muskrat got his start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that.
Tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calaveras would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper, and then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. Renato's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? Where did that go to? Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway.
Renato had sacrificed a friend for the Sky Ripper. It would be worth it if he could bring a super weapon to the rebellion, but the scientists had ruined everything.
Truth was, Renato really liked the sound his sword made in the air.